Negative impact.
President Obama says on Twitter the climate deal reached in Paris is huge. He touts American leadership. What, if anything, did they throw into that lake? Syed Farouk and his wife, Tashfeen Malik, thought to be near a small lake on the day of the deadly massacre in San Bernardino, where they killed 14 people. An FBI search of that lake continues. And updates on the killer's cell phones now from CBS News correspondent John Blackstone.
Law enforcement officials tell CBS News they've examined
the Paris Sea Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210 KEVT, Sahuarita, Tucson. Happy Hanukkah to everybody out there, and thank you for being part of the show today. My show revolves around the 4 L's: leadership, love, life, and lineage, and the ongoing story of real music made by real artists. Winter's light comes peeking through the window as the tablas pulsate on the lavish rug in Colin Walcott's apartment. Music from another present era starts to coalesce as light goes to dark, and the spirit of Charlie Parker is channeled by Paul McCandless, while Glenn Moore's upright bass follows the unchained melody of my guest's guitar. My guest today is one of the most accomplished guitarists in the world. He's an exceptional rhythm player, playing in 4/4 time, odd meters, or free music. His output on the acoustic and electric guitars is prodigious and unique. It's a blend of Django Reinhardt and Les Paul, Tiny Grimes and Ted Dunbar. He came of age at the height of Hendrix, McLaughlin, and Carlos Santana, electric axe players marinating in LSD, spiritual gurus, and live concert bills that featured Tiny Tim, followed by Miles Davis. He became part of the seminal quartet known as Oregon, and they coalesced on the bandstand under the tutelage of Paul Winter and developed a sound somewhere between home and a distant land. That spot in the cosmos where levitation occurs because of melodic improvisation. The laws of gravity do not apply. He is a musical survivalist in an industry that now resembles a small business. Countless records on ECM and Vanguard, and in live settings with Glenn Moore or John Abercrombie, or playing the ring modulator with Clive Stevens and Billy Cobham. Live from Rome, Italy, Ralph Towner, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you.
How are you, brother?
You sound very distant, as far away as you actually are, so I'm strained to hear you here.
Okay, well, hopefully it'll improve over time. I think it will, and I will do my best to talk into the microphone. How are you, man?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm doing very well.
Ralph, can you talk just straight off the bat about I can't exactly remember, it was in Germany somewhere. Glenn Moore went home because his wife had a baby, and you were involved in an automobile accident that took the life of Colin Walcott. And I wanted you to talk about the adversity that you personally had to overcome from that incident.
Yeah, that was actually quite traumatic. I have to say that we had, as Glenn probably had told you, that we had sent him home and finished it. We finished the tour as a trio. We had just one concert after we gave Glenn leave to go home because his wife was expecting. And we played one concert in Berlin, in West Berlin, of course, and as a trio. And then the next morning we set out for the west, to this corridor connecting road that goes through East Germany to get you back to the west. And it was very poorly lit road. It was foggy, and Paul and I were asleep. We had kind of an old tour bus. It was quite sturdy, actually, but Paul and I were asleep in the middle of it, and kind of bunk beds that were part of the bus, and we were pointing feet first, basically, right behind the driver, and then Colin, who was sitting in the passenger seat in front, and there were no seat belts, and we were sound asleep, and then we were awakened with this head-on crash, and we crashed into the back of a tanker, a large truck that was standing still in the fog, had stopped right in the middle of the highway, evidently, and we hit that going as fast as that bus could go, as far as I could go, because I say Paul and I survived because we were asleep, and we had some foot injuries or something, but the impact was so strong, probably one of the ugliest sounds I've ever heard in my life, all the glass shattering, and then we were hit from behind by a gasoline tanker that turned upside down. So it was just a big pile and a big wreck, but somehow, and unfortunately Colin and the driver were both killed.
Mm-hmm.
They were out in the front, and so we pulled Colin out. He was still breathing, but he didn't last very long. And the driver died several days later. But so the impact of that, as far as the group, you can imagine we had been together, I don't know, for quite a few years at that point, maybe 14 years, since 1984. And we took some time after that, after a dreadful time. We weren't sure if we wanted to continue or not. But then we did, after several months, in 6 months, we did venture out to play some trio concerts. And it had seemed that the music was still worth pursuing. And so we continued as a trio for about 2 years. And then in a kind of a memorial concert we did in New York for Colin, a lot of musicians, DeJohnette and Dave Holland and Pat Metheny and Trila Gertu, as a matter of fact. And us, of course, we're all playing in different combinations for this big celebration for Colin. And the three of us actually played with Trila, who was a great friend of Colin, and had a similar setup percussion-wise that Colin did. And that seemed to be, quite an inspiration. So he joined us and he was with us about 7 years, I think. And so then we were back as a quartet.
I wanted to, you know what it is, Ralph, it's such an honor to connect with you, man. It's been a long time coming, and I never, your band was well off the ground before I was even conceived in 1978, but I was listening back to my interview with Glenn, and it was a magical, you guys were, I believe, with Tim Hardin, who was having a bit of a nervous breakdown at the point, and all of a sudden, you had this drummer Maruga, who was supposed to be, you were trying to coalesce with a group.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then
Steve something was before he changed his name, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I was cracking up because it was like Glenn was using his single parenting as an excuse to never go out. Someone said, "Hey, you have to come to this jam session tonight. There's this cat playing sitar. You must come." And he didn't really want to go, but he did. And it turned out to be Colin. And then after Airto kind of played it wasn't really Airto's style. Pretty soon, Colin stepped in, and next thing you know, you guys. And for the audience out there, the band Oregon really cultivated their sound from the Winter Consort. And I just found it to be such a beautiful story. You guys were such a progressive group. There's no group today that even comes close to the world sound that you guys had at the time. And part of my show is about overcoming adversity. So it was, Glenn went back to Colin's apartment that night. It was a Robards fixer-upper. There was, Navajo rugs. And the next thing you know, he's playing your classical pieces on his marimba. And I'm just thinking to myself, what a bunch of talented musicians. But I did want to ask you how often you think about Colin in your life now.
Oh, sometimes, Jack, I think I had a dream of him just recently, about a month ago, or less. And we're always doing something pleasant. I mean, he's always hanging around somehow, his spirit. So we have, and actually I met with Lanny, his wife, in New York last year, I think, maybe last, and it's in Manhattan. Went through there and went to our old. I used to live in the same building right up above Colin, and it would, I'd have to avoid peeking down into the kitchen. I was one floor higher, and I could see inside the apartment and the inside. Anyway, we were in the same building, and Colin's wife still has that apartment, so we visited that tiny little apartment, and my wife and I but Colin, Colin's always there somehow. He was such an extraordinary person, and he's not some person you assume has stopped living somehow. I mean, his presence is still very, very prominent somehow.
That's good to know because.
But I get a pleasant visit from him in a dream every now and then.
Yeah, no, I mean, because he came on the scene for you guys so spontaneously, and then to leave like that in such a traumatic fashion, being such an amazing player, bringing in that Indian instrumentation to the band. But I wanted you the perfect person to ask about this, Ralph, is, so much music, live experience shows, either you're going to see a concert and it's the same concert every night. It's the greatest hits. Maybe it's, when Barry White was still with us, you got the best, the top 10, or James Brown, or even now today you go and you see these very structured performances with very little room for improvisation. And your band, Oregon, and it's when you guys were playing before and after the winter consorts every night and just listening to each other and just going on improvisation with not any structure, just listening. And when you go into something like that high level of improvisation, can you talk about how the level of coincidence, the percentages go up so much higher that magical stuff can happen when it's just about listening to each other and just letting go of we're going to play this now, we're going to play this way. Just talk about how I like to call it magic, but I hear other cats calling it the highest level of coincidence, and the percentages go way high. And I wanted you to just talk to the audience about that.
Well, it's basically four people, and in terms of the quartet, or any number of people that are in a small group that does that, when you're improvising from scratch, basically what we still do. When you just act on the first sound that whoever happens to produce the first sound, and you all react to that, and slowly add another sound. And the more events you add to something, the more the history it happens. It's like an evolving history, a piece is. Because you play something and its value is to the story, to the context, is added to what's already come before. So that's as a composer. And when you have four people trying to compose a single piece, that's basically what it is. I mean, if you have no structure at all, you can't avoid but slowly evolve a structure as it's happening, at least a context in the language, and you want to keep syntax somehow. But you can go away from it or come back to it. But everything you play or somebody else plays, you do it in such a way. It's a real trick to be able to listen to someone else and to yourself in equal parts at the same time, so simultaneously, and have everyone contributing to a single piece. Basically, that's what you're doing. You're telling a story, but everyone is contributing at the same time. So it is kind of magic if it works. Sometimes it works better than others, depending on sometimes it depends on that first sound or how things evolve. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. As far as being a group composition really what it is. And as a composer, when you're putting a piece together on your own, you're still improvising to come up with, how it proceeds. And it's always a story somehow. The successful pieces are the ones that tell the same story all the way through and evolve.
Yeah, no, I think you're
good at making endings.
No, I mean, I think that, because you had this, I mean, we're talking to an incredible composer in Ralph Towner, and I should have, instead of saying just starting from scratch, I guess just, it's the idea of playing, the same piece, but it's different every time. Okay, where you
can do that with pieces that are already written. I mean, as far as in the old jazz format, you would still play, the theme may have been written very precisely in some cases, but then as you improvise on it, you're improvising even on the, if you're the accompanist, so the guitar part. I'm not playing the same rhythms ever do I repeat myself that much, and it's always open for little alterations, even in the rhythmic parts. But there's still always something interesting. I just played a concert in London. Actually, it was part of a big concert that was in honor of Kenny Wheeler.
Sure.
And played trios with Dave Holland and Norma Winston, and then we were lots of hanging out afterwards. And somebody mentioned, one person had mentioned that somebody had a big discussion with Elvin about how did he feel about playing My Favorite Things every night.
Right.
And Elvin said he did. They played the same tune every night for years. They always played My Favorite Things, and I forget. And I'm sorry, I can't complete exactly what Elvin said. But,
right, it's okay.
But I thought it was interesting that they kept playing close to the same repertoire, but they played My Favorite Things for, half an hour the thing would go on.
Right.
But so it isn't always just it's starting. In that case, they use that as a vehicle, and they could just play on that thing for hours.
I wanted, it's funny. I've been meaning to ask Glenn this, but now I can ask Ralph Towner. How did you the epic? I mean, so many great albums from your band. So you've made so many great albums, but how did you wind up connecting with Elvin so that you guys wound up collaborating on that album together? And I think
Elvin was at that point was on Vanguard, the same record label, and he had heard our group as a result, and the recording of something, and I think he mentioned to Maynard Solomon, I think was the head of Vanguard, and I think he had mentioned the name, and he said, "Oh, that group's great. I really hear myself in that group. I'd like to do a recording with them."
He said that.
So
that's awesome. That is
he
so
joined us
awesome.
for that recording. So the interesting thing about that record was one that we had decided, we got to keep Elvin playing all the time, and not with no breaks. We got to do it like we did. So I sketched out a tune or two, and we started with those. And when we ran out of any tunes that I'd written, ideas, then we'd say, okay, do a duet. It would call on somebody do a duo or somebody do a trio, and I'll go back and write the next tune after that. So the tunes are sort of thrown together on that set while we kept Elvin playing. So if there wasn't a tune, you'd have an improvised duet, and then I'd have just a fragment that we could work on, and we'd come back and do that.
I love
it. We kept playing, recording and playing straight through the whole session until we thought we had worn Elvin down enough, and we had enough stuff anyway. And and he fortunately he sweated thoroughly too. So
Of course. No, I
he
mean,
worked up in one of his famous sweats.
oh yeah.
But he had a great time. We had a great time, and when we came to the finish, I think he and Colin went out to a bar next door and to the studio and sort of did kind of a rough mix of everything. But it was all Elvin's idea to do that recording, so that was kind of an honor and a lot of fun. He was really a great guy, and we kind of stayed in touch with him and crossed paths a lot like all the musicians do on tour.
Can I ask you,
He was always happy to see Colin. He'd kiss Colin's bald head.
I'm sure. No, I mean, could you talk, I guess as a non-musician, merely as a journalist here, just trying to figure stuff out, what do you think he meant by saying, I hear my sound in their music? What did he mean by that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he said, I hear places for myself in that music, and he identified with it somehow. So it surprises me sometimes, the breadth and the variety of musicians that have been friendly towards organ's music, the music we made as organ. And it's surprising. Some people say they've been influenced by, and you'd be surprised. I've even had punk rock groups say they're influenced heavily by organ. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the band it's an infectious groove, and it's mysterious and haunting at the same time. You guys set a mood with digital music in today's rampant pop world. There's rarely an opportunity for haunting, emotive, present music. But we're talking to a really, really amazing guitar player, and Ralph, I wanted to play this piece of music for you, and then we'll come back and break it down. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Music on the Jake Feinberg Show, brought to you by the Stereo Hospital, the Circle Tree Ranch, Abbott Taylor Jewelers, the Jewish Community Center of Southern Arizona, and Craig Pretzinger of Allstate Insurance. We thank them for their support. All right, Mr. Tanner, I don't need to tell you what tune that was. Nardis, Miles Davis, Take It Away. But I was listening to that this morning with my daughters. What a just lilting, beautiful piece, man. Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a relatively simple piece, but it's got this magic to it, and I don't know how I don't know how much Bill Evans had to do with that piece, but the composition of it on Miles, had a lot of help sometimes from the musicians he worked with as far as writing things. But I don't know. I don't remember what album is that from.
It's a live
Was that a solo? Because I heard a lot of bass playing going on in that. I didn't know if it was a duo with Peacock, or was it just a solo?
No, that is just a solo piece of a live performance from. We're going to get the information. It's on YouTube. It's just you in a solo capacity. But while we look that up, is that a relatively old concert, or? We're going to get the date on it. But I wanted to ask you, the first time you saw Miles, and then also what stood out to you as far as leadership qualities that he exhibited on the bandstand.
Well, I think the shape, he had control over the, just by his presence, over the shape of the tunes and the way it unfolded. And of course, whenever he'd play his solos, and if you have a solo, he kind of transcended. You never hear anybody say, "Oh, what a great trumpet player." You never hear that said of Miles Davis.
Right.
He wasn't just a trumpet player. He didn't think about what instrument it was. He transcended that, took you off into a world that just was, as I say, transcended just this constant awareness that some guy was playing an instrument very well. And to me, that's one of the most valuable experiences from my favorite musicians. The ones that influenced me the most were the ones that made you forget, become unaware of the actual instrument they were playing, and they pulled you into the world of sound and music and the story they were telling, and no matter what instrument they were playing. And that seems to have been a lesson for me, and kind of an ambition or a goal to be able to play that way, to basically take people's mind away from the instrument so much as the subtleties of the nuance of the story that you're telling.
I love it. I love the way you just put that. I mean, it's transcending the music so that you sort of just totally forget about the fact that whatever instrument that they're playing, it's not like they're a competent player. It's that they have just gone above and beyond. I mean, do you recall the first time that you saw him live?
Yeah, I think actually it was in Seattle.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, it was the first tour of that incredible group with Tony Williams and Herbie Hancock.
And Ron Carter.
And, of course, Wayne Shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And it must have been some Jazz Alley. I think it was like 66 or something. And in fact, somehow, like some sort of fan, I managed to find out the hotel that Herbie was staying at.
Right.
And I called, and I managed to get a hold of him. I called, and I said, well, I have this nice piano where I'm living. I had somehow rented an apartment that included a giant grand piano. It's got a beautiful Steinway. It took up the whole room of this one-room apartment. But so I just lived in Seattle 1 year, and anyway, so Herbie answered the phone, and we started talking about music, and I said, oh, if you could come over, I have this nice piano, and he was very gracious and said, well, no, can't do it, because now I realize, like, this is impossible, and, that's one of the few times I ever, approached a really well-known musician, and it was many years, quite a few years later in New York, I think Oregon, we shared a bill with the Headhunters, and I asked Herbie if he remembered this conversation. Of course, he didn't, but I was always grateful. I thought that was a nice feeling in terms of how to behave toward a public, especially, if you sort of innocent or naive young musician. But to get back to the Miles Davis group, that group was absolutely magic. The combination of those players, and that as far as Miles always stood out his solos. Wayne actually kind of did capture and sort of achieve that same goal, that same level that Miles had, but. That was the first time I actually saw them live, and then after that, when I moved to New York, and I went to see him a little more frequently. And I remember the Village Gate was a big place in New York, and I remember seeing a great gig there. That by then I'd become friends with Chick and Dave Holland and Jack DeJohnette, so I could kind of get a little closer. But I never did meet Miles or speak to him. So
interesting. No, this is. I don't think I realized that you were. How far is? I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it. Chehalis, where you were born in Washington.
Oh yeah, Jesus, yeah.
No, I was going to say.
I left there when I was 5 years old, actually, and moved to. My mother moved us to Bend, Oregon.
You lived in
I
Bend?
kind of grew up in Central Oregon.
Holy cow. Bend, Oregon in the 1940s and 50s. What did it look like there?
Yeah, 1945, basically. It was 9,000, population of 9,000.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, do you remember
any? And it was like one of these little bubble towns. It was unbelievable. It was kind of one of these called Sundowner town, basically, racially. If you were any ethnic group, you had to be sure you were out of town by sundown. So we never even experienced anything because the town was so sewed up so tight by it was just this little white town, and it's amazing. So I remember any black music I heard on the radio that was like hooray, and I remember being attracted to all that Chuck Berry and the rock and roll on the piano player. It was a Fats Domino, and all the black rock and roll, and so I got a nice taste of that somehow from the radio, and also from records that my two brothers, older brothers who had been in the Second World War. I had lots of Duke Ellington, lots of Nat King Cole Trio, and lots of swing band music of all the swing bands, and Betty Goodman, and so I really had a steady diet of that kind of music. And I started playing the trumpet when I was 6, and I was able to sort of imitate Louis Armstrong. I played in Dixieland bands and marching bands, and so I started.
You still there? Let's hit that.
To make a call, press 1.
Let's hit that piece of music, and we'll try to reconnect with Mr. Towner. a Portland Northwest type style weather down here, Mr. Towner. I think that's why we lost you. We got a huge storm coming in right now. It's great to have you back. Did you recognize that's you on piano?
Now that was Wichita. Now what was that from?
That was
that?
That's a recent, probably 4 or 5 years ago. Oregon, Wichita too. The late great Jim Pepper, another cat you probably ran into in the Pacific Northwest. But
oh yeah.
But I love. I'll tell you, Towner. I mean, I get off on your piano playing. I love your guitar playing, but their piano playing is amazing too. So melodic, so beautiful. And you know, I mean, you.
I got to say, I didn't know who was playing the piano. I was hearing.
Well,
I
mean,
I didn't recognize that piece for a little bit.
Well, we had a lost connection between Rome and here, but yeah, that was. Can you talk about give an example? I mean, we're so in a bubble here in the United States. You know, for those of us that don't get to travel internationally a lot, can you talk a little bit about the vibrancy of the scene and kind of the gigs that you find to be very fun these days for you?
Well, I think they're all fun. I tell you the truth. I mean, I'm one of those lucky musicians that gets to play exactly what he wants all the time, and with some great players. I mean, as I just said, unfortunately, it was a memorial thing for Kenny Wheeler. It was a great trumpet player that I had recorded with and worked with, and anyway, but the done in London is this big to-do for him, and as I played with, and then so I had a reunion with Dave Holland, and we played on the concert together, and so that was a lot of fun. But so I get a lot of opportunities to play in solo situations, and of course the tours of Oregon, and then and I don't know, a lot of things keep coming up, and I think that the biggest the most wonderful thing about being able to travel and play in different countries and doing a tour where you change cities every day, countries every day, even. I mean, so you're traveling like crazy on a tour, but you get such a cross-section of humanity. I mean, sometimes they tour like one day in Madrid, the next day in Poland, the next day in Finland, the next day in Germany, and then the next day in Portugal. This is what I just did about a month ago. This was 1 week. I went to those different countries, played a concert every night, and so. But the thing that's exciting is the audiences all relate to the music in a way that they feel as if this music is something born of their culture, and this happens even in I did some concerts in Korea, in South Korea, and the South Koreans have a wonderful radio station in Seoul that they'd been listening to stuff that I'd recorded for 15 years, I think, when I first went there. So I had a built-in audience already, and they liked the music, and their comment was, "You must be Korean. You must have some Korean in you." You know, so they're thinking that. And there's nothing Korean about my music, that I'm playing.
No, nothing.
Maybe there is, because there's a sense, if you're playing, as I say, with a sense of involvement, and if you're truly involved in what you're playing, and you're hearing it with fresh ears, what you're doing. I mean, hopefully you can do that every night, but the audience can sense this. Audiences have their own level of intelligence when they're drawn into something. Pretty soon, if you're really playing well, the entire audience is breathing with you. They're breathing with your phrasing, and you don't hear it's an incredible experience to have that feeling. And it happens in all cultures if you're doing well. I mean, and so to be able to do that or experience that is I think unequaled, especially the ultimate compliment is if someone feels that maybe you might possibly have come from their country or something.
Well,
so
yeah, no, I mean, Ralph, I just we have to wrap part one here. I feel like we have a lot more to get to. I really appreciate you staying up late. I know I'm sure you stay up late anyway, but
well, it's not that late here now. No, it's about 9 o'clock.
But I got Eddie Palmieri waiting on the other line. He's celebrating his 79th birthday, and we haven't even gotten into. I don't know if anybody ever thought you were from Puerto Rico or like you're Korean.
No, probably not. That isn't quite what I mean either. There's some sort of culture. They feel like there's some cultural tie.
I totally get it, and so let's just stay in touch, and in the new year we'll in January, February we'll pick up our conversation. But it's an honor to connect with you, man. I'm really glad we got a chance.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Sorry about the phone mishap.
Hey, you know what? We couldn't have done this in the 1970s, so I'm glad we could do it today. And I'll get a copy. I'll get a copy to you right away.